China's transformation over the past few decades has been nothing short of remarkable. The nation has not only become an economic powerhouse but has also significantly bolstered its military capabilities and developed world-class infrastructure. This rapid modernization means China now possesses a formidable presence in Asia. Its armed forces are equipped with advanced weaponry, including sophisticated missiles, a growing naval fleet, and cutting-edge cyber warfare tools. Large-scale infrastructure projects, such as the Belt and Road Initiative, further project China's influence across the continent and beyond, connecting nations through new trade routes and development projects, thereby enhancing its strategic leverage. The People's Liberation Army has undergone extensive reforms, focusing on joint operations and power projection far beyond its borders. Investments in aircraft carriers, stealth fighters, and advanced naval destroyers signal a clear intent to develop a blue water navy capable of operating globally. This military expansion is complemented by a sophisticated domestic industrial base that can produce a wide array of military hardware, reducing reliance on foreign suppliers. Furthermore, China's advancements in space technology and artificial intelligence are increasingly integrated into its defense strategy, creating a multi-domain threat capability that presents new challenges to regional stability and existing military doctrines. This buildup is not just about numbers of ships or planes, it represents a qualitative leap in capabilities. China's focus on anti-access and area denial strategies, for instance, aims to make it difficult for external powers, particularly the United States, to operate freely near China's periphery. These strategies involve deploying long-range precision missiles, integrated air defense systems, and electronic warfare capabilities. The sheer scale of its domestic infrastructure, including high-speed rail networks and modern ports, also means China can rapidly mobilize resources and personnel, a critical advantage in any potential conflict scenario, reinforcing its position as a central player in regional security considerations. The message is clear. China is no longer just a regional economic giant, it is a military power that must be reckoned with. Its advanced infrastructure supports this military growth, creating a synergy that amplifies its overall strength. This development has understandably caused ripples across Asia and the wider world, prompting a re-evaluation of strategic balances and security arrangements. The implications of this rise are profound, shaping diplomatic engagements, defense planning, and the very future of international relations in the 21st century, demanding careful consideration from all global actors. While China's power is undeniable, it does not exist in a vacuum. Asia is a diverse continent with several other significant nations, each possessing its own strengths and strategic interests. Countries like Japan, South Korea, India, and Australia have capable militaries and long-standing security concerns that shape their policies towards Beijing. Japan, for instance, boasts a technologically advanced self-defense force, particularly its maritime component, and is increasingly shedding post-World War II constraints on its military posture. India, a nuclear power with a large and experienced army, shares a long and sometimes contentious border with China, leading to its own military modernization efforts and strategic partnerships. These neighboring countries often view China's rise with a mixture of awe and apprehension. On one hand, China's economic dynamism offers opportunities for trade and investment. On the other hand, its growing military assertiveness, particularly in territorial disputes like the South China Sea or the East China Sea, raises concerns about regional stability and freedom of navigation. This complex relationship means that while economic interdependence is high, strategic mistrust also persists, leading to intricate diplomatic maneuvering and a continuous search for a stable equilibrium in the region. Many of these nations also benefit from external support, most notably from the United States, which has a long history of engagement in Asia. The United States maintains a significant military presence and has formal treaty alliances with several key countries, including Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and Australia. This network of alliances acts as a counterbalance to China's growing influence and provides a security umbrella for many of its partners. The involvement of these external powers adds another layer of complexity to the regional power dynamics, ensuring that any major shift in the status quo would likely draw in actors from beyond Asia. Therefore, assessing China's strength requires looking beyond its own capabilities to consider the collective power and resolve of its neighbors and their allies. While China is undoubtedly the most powerful single actor in the region, it faces a complex geopolitical landscape. The interplay between China's ambitions, the concerns of its neighbors, and the involvement of global powers like the United States creates a delicate balance. This balance is constantly being tested by evolving military technologies, economic shifts, and diplomatic initiatives, making the region a focal point of global strategic competition. The United States has long viewed the Asia-Pacific, or Indo-Pacific as it is now more commonly termed, as a region critical to its own security and economic prosperity. In response to China's growing influence, the United States Army, along with other branches of its military, has undergone significant transformations. A key element of this is the establishment of multi-domain task force teams. These specialized units are designed for intelligence gathering, conducting information operations, and, if necessary, striking targets deep within an adversary's territory. Their focus is clearly on countering China's advanced capabilities and its anti-access and area denial strategies, aiming to ensure United States forces can operate effectively in contested environments. This strategic refocus involves not only developing new military units, but also deploying new technologies. For example, the United States Army is actively working on new composite air defense battalions specifically designed to counter China's arsenal of rockets, missiles, and drones. This highlights a recognition of the specific threats posed by China's military modernization. Furthermore, there's an increasing emphasis on bolstering ground-based intelligence collection in the Indo-Pacific. United States Army Pacific Commander General Charles Flynn has pointed out a potential over-reliance on aerial and space-based intelligence, suggesting a need for more terrestrial assets to gain a comprehensive understanding of the operational environment. America's role is not solely about its own military deployments, it is also heavily reliant on its network of alliances and partnerships. The United States is actively strengthening military relationships with regional allies, such as the Philippines, Japan, and Australia. These partnerships are crucial for forward presence intelligence sharing and operational coordination. However, the nature and commitment of these alliances can sometimes be complex. For instance, while joint exercises with the Philippines are frequent, some experts note that the United States has not always provided an unequivocally firm security commitment, leading to descriptions of the relationship as strong in appearance, but potentially lacking depth in certain crisis scenarios. The question of Taiwan remains a particularly sensitive issue. While there is significant concern about a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan, and the United States provides Taiwan with defensive capabilities, official United States policy maintains what is called strategic ambiguity. This means the United States does not explicitly state whether it would intervene militarily to defend Taiwan. This ambiguity is intended to deter both Beijing from attacking and Taipei from unilaterally declaring independence. The United States' presence and its evolving strategy in the Pacific demonstrate a clear commitment to remaining a key player, shaping the security architecture of a region vital to global stability and economic progress. Alliances and joint military exercises play a crucial role in shaping the security landscape of Asia, acting as both a deterrent and a means of enhancing interoperability among friendly nations. The United States in particular relies heavily on its network of formal alliances with countries like Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the Philippines. These alliances provide a framework for collective defense, allowing for the forward deployment of United States forces and facilitating close cooperation on security matters. These partnerships are not static. They evolve in response to the changing geopolitical environment, particularly the rise of China and its more assertive regional posture. Joint military exercises are a visible demonstration of these alliances and partnerships in action. Events like Balikatan, or shoulder-to-shoulder, between the United States and the Philippines, or trilateral exercises involving Japan and Australia, serve multiple purposes. They enhance the ability of different armed forces to operate together seamlessly, testing communication systems, command structures, and tactical procedures. These drills also send a strong signal of collective resolve to potential adversaries, showcasing the combined military capabilities of the participating nations. Recently, these exercises have expanded to include extra-regional countries like France, Canada, and the United Kingdom, underscoring the global interest in maintaining stability in the Indo-Pacific. However, The proliferation of such exercises and the strengthening of alliance networks are not without their critics or potential downsides. From China's perspective, these activities can be perceived as containment efforts, aimed at curbing its legitimate rise and influence. This perception can lead to increased suspicion and mistrust, potentially fueling an arms race and escalating regional tensions. Some analysts also worry that the focus on bloc politics, with alliances centered around the United States on one side and growing coordination among autocratic states like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea on the other, risks fragmenting existing regional security architectures such as the ASEAN-centered frameworks and could usher in a so-called new Cold War dynamic. Despite these concerns, for many nations in the region, these alliances and joint exercises are seen as essential for maintaining a balance of power and ensuring their security interests are protected. They provide smaller nations with a degree of assurance and leverage they might not possess on their own. The effectiveness of these security arrangements ultimately depends on the commitment of the participating nations, the clarity of their mutual defense obligations, and their ability to adapt to an ever-evolving strategic environment. The intricate web of these partnerships underscores the interconnectedness of regional security and the high stakes involved in preserving peace and stability. Envisioning a modern war in Asia, particularly one involving major powers like China and the United States along with their respective allies, paints a deeply unsettling picture. The sheer concentration of advanced military technology, economic interdependence, and population density in the region means that any large-scale conflict would be catastrophically destructive. Modern warfare is no longer confined to distant battlefields. It would permeate every aspect of life. We would likely see the widespread use of precision-guided missiles, sophisticated cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure, and potentially even the deployment of hypersonic weapons, making defense incredibly challenging for all parties involved. The initial phases of such a conflict could involve intense aerial and naval engagements, as well as missile strikes aimed at crippling command and control centers, air bases, and naval fleets. Anti-access and area denial capabilities, which China has heavily invested in, would attempt to prevent United States and allied forces from intervening effectively. Conversely, United States forces and their allies would seek to degrade these systems and project power into contested areas. The fight for air and sea superiority would be fierce and costly, with significant losses of personnel and equipment on all sides. The urbanized nature of many potential flashpoints also means a high risk of civilian casualties and extensive collateral damage. Beyond the immediate kinetic impacts, the disruption to critical infrastructure would be immense. Power grids, communication networks, financial systems, and transportation links would become prime targets for both physical attacks and cyber warfare. This would paralyze economies, disrupt essential services, and create widespread chaos. The human cost would be staggering, not just in terms of military casualties but also civilian deaths and injuries, mass displacement of populations, and long-term humanitarian crises. The psychological toll on societies enduring such a conflict would be profound and lasting, potentially leading to social and political instability for generations. Ultimately, the consensus among many defense analysts and strategic thinkers is that a major war in Asia would likely be unwinnable for any party involved. The level of destruction would be so high, and the economic and human costs so exorbitant, that even a nominal victor would find themselves presiding over a devastated landscape and a shattered global order. The interconnectedness of the modern world means consequences would ripple outwards, affecting global security and prosperity. This grim reality, I think, really underscores the immense responsibility of leaders to prevent such a catastrophe. A regional war in Asia, especially one involving China and its major trading partners, would unleash devastating economic consequences that would be felt across the entire globe. The Indo-Pacific region is a critical hub for global manufacturing, trade, and supply chains. Key maritime routes, such as the South China Sea and the Strait of Malacca, handle a vast percentage of the world's shipping. Any conflict that disrupts these routes would lead to an immediate and severe shock to global commerce. The flow of essential goods, from electronics and manufactured products to raw materials and energy resources, would be severely curtailed, leading to shortages and skyrocketing prices worldwide. The intricate web of global supply chains, already shown to be vulnerable during the COVID-19 pandemic, would face an unprecedented crisis. Companies reliant on components or finished goods from the conflict zone would see their production lines grind to a halt. This would trigger a cascade of economic damage, including business failures, widespread job losses, and a sharp decline in global GDP. Financial markets would likely experience extreme volatility and potential collapses, as investor confidence evaporates and capital flees to perceived safe havens. The economic interdependence that has fueled decades of global growth would tragically become a vector for transmitting economic pain. Politically, such a conflict would create deep and lasting rifts in the international community. Alliances would be tested, and neutral countries would come under immense pressure to choose sides. International institutions like the United Nations could find themselves paralyzed, unable to forge a consensus for de-escalation or conflict resolution. The war would likely fuel nationalism and protectionism, further eroding the cooperative frameworks that underpin global governance. Moreover, with ongoing conflicts and instability in other regions, such as the situation in Ukraine or potential flare-ups in the Middle East, a major war in Asia could stretch global diplomatic and humanitarian resources to their breaking point. The long-term geopolitical landscape would be irrevocably altered. Trust between nations would be shattered, making future cooperation on global challenges like climate change, pandemics, and nuclear proliferation significantly more difficult. The conflict could also embolden other revisionist powers, leading to a more dangerous and unstable world order. The resources diverted to war and reconstruction would be immense, setting back development goals by decades and exacerbating global inequalities. In essence, a war in Asia would not just be a regional tragedy but a global calamity, with far-reaching and enduring negative consequences for all nations, combatant or not. The very nature of modern warfare, particularly among technologically advanced and economically intertwined nations, makes the concept of a true winner almost obsolete. In past eras, victory might have been defined by territorial conquest, the decisive defeat of an enemy's military, or the imposition of favorable peace terms. However, in a conflict involving powers like China, the United States, and their regional allies, the costs associated with achieving such objectives would likely outweigh any conceivable benefits. The destructive capacity of modern weaponry ensures that even the side achieving its military goals would suffer immense losses in terms of human lives, economic stability, and international standing. Consider the economic devastation that would inevitably follow. A prolonged conflict would decimate industries, shatter supply chains, and lead to a global recession, if not depression. The victor might find themselves inheriting a region in ruins, facing astronomical reconstruction costs, and dealing with a deeply traumatized and resentful population. The interconnectedness of global finance means that even the aggressor's economy would suffer grievously. Trade relationships built over decades would be severed, and access to critical markets and resources could be lost indefinitely. The idea of emerging economically stronger from such a conflict is a dangerous fantasy. Politically, the fallout would be equally dire. A nation initiating a major war, even if militarily successful, would likely face international condemnation and isolation. Alliances could crumble, and new hostile coalitions might form in response. The global order, already fragile, could collapse into a more anarchic state characterized by mistrust and persistent conflict. The legitimacy and soft power of the victor would be severely undermined, making it harder to achieve long-term strategic goals that depend on international cooperation and goodwill. The political capital expended would be enormous, potentially leading to domestic instability as well. Furthermore, the human cost transcends any strategic calculation. Millions of lives, both military and civilian, could be lost or irrevocably damaged. The long-term consequences of such trauma on societies are difficult to quantify but are undeniably profound, leading to cycles of bitterness and a desire for retribution that could fuel future conflicts. The environmental damage from modern warfare, including the potential use of highly destructive conventional weapons or even the unthinkable escalation to nuclear exchange, would leave scars on the planet for generations. Thus, when all costs are tallied, the notion of a winner in a modern great power war becomes a hollow and tragic illusion. Despite China's significant military advancements and assertive rhetoric in certain geopolitical spheres, its actions often reveal a pragmatic approach, particularly when its core economic interests are at stake. China's economic miracle has been built on decades of integration into the global economy, and its continued prosperity depends heavily on stable trade relationships and access to international markets and technologies. This economic reality serves as a powerful moderating influence on its foreign policy decisions, suggesting a reluctance to engage in actions that could jeopardize these vital interests. A major conflict would undoubtedly disrupt these ties, with catastrophic consequences for China's own development. We see evidence of this cautious approach in various international situations. For example, in the Middle East, even amidst heightened tensions like the Gaza conflict in late 2024, China has generally preferred diplomatic maneuvering, economic leverage, and symbolic actions over direct military engagement. Its involvement often aims to bolster its global image as a responsible power and subtly undermine U.S. influence, but typically at minimal risk to its own direct security or economic stability. This suggests a strategic calculation that prioritizes long-term influence building through economic and diplomatic means, rather than through high-risk military adventurism, unless its explicitly defined core interests are directly threatened. China's economic pragmatism is further highlighted by its ability to maintain strong economic ties, even with countries with whom it may have diplomatic disagreements. For instance, despite political tensions, trade and investment often continue, demonstrating a capacity to compartmentalize economic relationships from geopolitical disputes where possible. This prioritization of economic stability and growth indicates a deep understanding within Beijing that its legitimacy and power are significantly derived from its economic performance. Engaging in a war that would devastate its economy and alienate its trading partners would be a self-inflicted wound of immense proportions. Therefore, while China's military modernization is a critical factor in regional and global security, it is equally important to consider the powerful constraints imposed by its economic imperatives. The leadership in Beijing is acutely aware that decades of progress could be undone by a major conflict. This does not mean that China will shy away from asserting its interests, but it does suggest that its strategic calculus is likely to involve a careful weighing of risks and rewards, with a strong inclination to avoid actions that would lead to widespread economic disruption and international isolation, favoring instead a more patient long-term approach to achieving its national objectives. The stark reality of modern warfare, with its potential for unprecedented destruction and global disruption, underscores a fundamental truth. Peace is not merely a noble aspiration, but a pragmatic necessity. In a conflict involving major powers in Asia, the economic, political, and human costs would be so astronomical that any notion of a clear winner becomes meaningless. The interconnectedness of our world means that the shockwaves would be felt globally, affecting every nation and individual. The intricate supply chains that fuel our economies would fracture, international cooperation on pressing global issues would falter, and the world would become a far more dangerous and unstable place. The alternative to this grim scenario lies in a steadfast commitment to diplomacy, dialogue, and the strengthening of international norms and institutions designed to prevent conflict. Instead of investing solely in military hardware and strategic competition, nations must also invest heavily in building trust, fostering mutual understanding, and creating robust channels for peaceful dispute resolution. This requires a willingness to engage even with adversaries, to seek common ground where possible, and to manage differences responsibly. The focus must shift from preparing for war to actively building and maintaining peace, recognizing that shared security is more valuable than unilateral dominance. History teaches us that wars, even those fought with clear objectives, often have unintended and devastating consequences. The path of conflict is fraught with miscalculation, escalation, and unforeseen horrors. In contrast, the path of peace, while often challenging and requiring persistent effort, offers the promise of shared prosperity, stability, and progress. For the nations of Asia and for the wider world, the choice should be clear. The immense human potential and economic dynamism of the region can only be fully realized in an environment of peace and cooperation, not one of constant tension and the looming threat of war. Ultimately, the pursuit of peace is not a sign of weakness but an expression of profound strength and wisdom. It acknowledges the shared humanity of all peoples and the common interest we all have in a stable and prosperous world. While nations must of course be prepared to defend their legitimate security interests, the primary focus should always be on preventing conflicts from arising in the first place. By choosing dialogue over devastation and cooperation over confrontation, we can strive to build a future where the immense energies of nations are directed towards constructive endeavors, ensuring that the 21st century is remembered not for its conflicts but for its collective achievements in advancing human well-being.